Imani Johnson stands alone outside the Silver Wingspan Airlines terminal, her designer clothes soaked in champagne as shocked employees file out with termination papers. Hours earlier, she'd been the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company. Now she's watching an entire airline staff lose their jobs because of her. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button now if you've ever witnessed discrimination that made your blood boil. The events you're about to hear changed an entire industry overnight. Are you ready to discover how one woman's humiliation became the catalyst for corporate America's biggest reckoning? The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Imani Johnson's penthouse apartment as she meticulously prepared for her day. At 38, Imani had established herself as one of the most formidable CEOs in the tech industry. Vertex Innovation Technologies, the company she had built from nothing but an idea and determination, was now valued at over $3 billion. Every morning followed the same precise routine. Up at 5 a.m. for yoga and meditation, followed by a protein-rich breakfast while reviewing international market reports. Today was different, though. Today carried the weight of expectation and opportunity. In 12 hours, she would be landing in Tokyo to close a deal worth $750 million, the largest in her company's history. "Ms. Johnson, your car will arrive in 30 minutes, her smart home system announced in its smooth, artificial voice. Ironically, powered by the very AI technology her company had pioneered. Imani smiled at the irony. Growing up in Detroit's East Side, technology had seemed like a distant dream. Her father, a factory worker, and her mother, a nurse working double shifts, had scraped together every dollar to give her opportunities they never had. The memory of her childhood home, small but immaculately kept, flashed in her mind as she selected a crisp white blouse to complement her navy designer suit. "You've got to be twice as good to get half as far," her grandmother used to tell her. Those words had propelled Imani through countless obstacles. The scholarship to Harvard, where professors would mistake her for janitorial staff. The MBA from Stanford, where male classmates would take credit for her ideas. The early days of Vertex, when investors would speak to her male assistants instead of her, assuming she couldn't possibly be the founder. "Package for you, Ms. Johnson," called Tanya, her executive assistant, interrupting her thoughts. Tanya had been with Imani since the beginning, one of the few people who truly understood the magnitude of what she had accomplished against all odds. "The final presentation documents for Tokyo," Tanya explained, handing over an elegant leather portfolio. "I've included the additional security protocols they requested, plus the market projections Vincent finished at midnight." Imani nodded appreciatively. The Tokyo deal wasn't just another contract. Vertex had developed an artificial intelligence security system that could revolutionize cyber protection worldwide. Major governments were interested, but securing the Japanese market first would set a global standard. "Any word from our competition?" Imani asked, carefully reviewing the pristine documents. "Whitfield Tech submitted their bid yesterday," Tanya replied, her expression darkening slightly. "Bradley Whitfield has been in Tokyo for a week already, whining and dining the executives." Imani felt a familiar tightness in her chest. Bradley Whitfield represented everything she had fought against her entire career. Old money, old connections, and old ways of thinking. His company's technology was inferior, but his privilege often opened doors that remained firmly shut for her. "Well," Imani said, straightening her shoulders, "our product speaks for itself, and so do I." She checked her reflection one final time. Every hair in place, every accessory carefully selected to project confidence and authority. Her custom briefcase, a gift from her team after their first billion-dollar valuation, contained everything she needed for the Tokyo presentation. The car ride to the airport was spent fielding calls from board members and reviewing security protocols for the presentation. Vertex's innovations in AI security were groundbreaking, potentially changing how governments and corporations protected their most sensitive information. If successful, this deal would cement Imani's legacy and validate the risks she had taken when founding the company. As the sleek black car pulled up to the airport terminal, Imani allowed herself a brief moment of pride. From a small apartment in Detroit to flying first class to Tokyo for a deal worth nearly $1 billion, she had defied every statistic, overcome every barrier. "We'll have the quarterly reports ready for your review when you land, Ms. Johnson," Tanya said, helping her organize her carry-on luggage. "Perfect. And Tanya, get some rest this weekend. We're going to be very busy once this deal closes." With her head held high, Imani entered the airport terminal, unaware that the next few hours would test her in ways that even her remarkable journey had not prepared her for. The exclusive Silver Wingspan VIP lounge occupied the entire west wing of the international terminal. With its marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and panoramic views of the runway, it was designed to coddle the airline's most elite passengers. Imani approached the reception desk, platinum membership card in hand, designer heels clicking rhythmically against the polished floor. "Good afternoon," she said to the receptionist, a slender man whose name tag read Carlton. "Imani Johnson, Tokyo Flight 472. Carlton's eyes flickered briefly over her face, then down to her card, then back up again. A moment of hesitation crossed his features before he plastered on a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Of course, Ms. Johnson. Let me just verify your membership." His fingers tapped unnecessarily long at the keyboard. Imani was used to this. The subtle pause, the double-checking, the silent questioning of whether she belonged in elite spaces. After all these years, she could spot the microaggressions from a mile away. "Everything seems to be in order," Carlton finally said, his tone suggesting mild surprise. "Please enjoy our amenities. The Tokyo flight will begin boarding in approximately 2 hours." "Thank you," Imani replied simply, maintaining her dignity as she always did in these moments. As she moved through the lounge, she felt the familiar weight of stares. A middle-aged white couple whispered behind their champagne flutes. A businessman in an ill-fitting suit did a double-take before returning to his laptop. None of this was new to Imani. These small indignities were the tax she paid for success in spaces not designed for people who looked like her. The lounge was arranged in intimate seating clusters, with the most coveted spots offering spectacular views of planes taking off and landing. Imani selected an elegant chair in the corner with the best vantage point, setting her briefcase beside her and ordering a sparkling water from a passing attendant. She had just begun reviewing her presentation when a commotion at the entrance caught her attention. A tall, broad-shouldered white man with silver hair and a red tie was speaking loudly to Carlton, gesturing emphatically toward the seating area. Even from a distance, Imani recognized Bradley Whitfield, CEO of competing Whitfield Technologies and, apparently, fellow passenger to Tokyo. Bradley's voice carried across the quiet lounge. "What do you mean it's occupied? That's my seat. I always sit there when I fly through here." Carlton nodded deferentially, his entire demeanor transformed from the cool assessment he'd given Imani to eager accommodation. "I understand, Mr. Whitfield. Let me see what I can do." A moment later, the lounge manager appeared, a thin man with a receding hairline whose name tag identified him as Wayne. He and Carlton conferred briefly before both men approached Imani, their expressions a mix of discomfort and determination. "Excuse me, Ms. Johnson," Wayne began, his voice lowered as if to minimize the confrontation. "There seems to have been a misunderstanding." Imani looked up from her tablet, her expression neutral. "What misunderstanding would that be?" "Well," Wayne shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "This particular seating area is usually reserved for our longtime platinum members. Mr. Whitfield specifically has been using this exact spot for many years." Imani closed her tablet slowly, deliberately. "I'm a platinum member as well," she said calmly, pulling out her card again. "And I wasn't aware that specific seats within the lounge were assigned to specific members." Wayne's smile tightened. "They're not officially assigned, of course. It's more of a courtesy we extend to our most valued customers." "I see," Imani said, maintaining her composure while acutely aware that several lounge patrons were now watching the interaction. "And I don't qualify as a most valued customer despite my platinum status?" Bradley Whitfield had moved closer, standing just behind Wayne with his arms crossed and an expression of impatient entitlement on his face. "It's just that Mr. Whitfield always sits here," Carlton interjected, as if repetition would somehow make their request less unreasonable. "He's been a member for 15 years. I've been a member for 8, Imani countered. "And nowhere in the membership agreement does it state that seating is determined by seniority or personal habit." She gestured around the half-empty lounge. "There are plenty of other seats available with the same view." Wayne's expression hardened slightly. "Ms. Johnson, we're simply trying to accommodate all our guests. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in one of our other seating areas. The eastern section is quite lovely this time of day." The implication was clear. Move voluntarily or be moved. Imani felt a familiar heat rising in her chest. The same feeling she'd experienced countless times throughout her career when confronted with discrimination veiled as policy or preference. "I'm perfectly comfortable right here, thank you," she stated firmly. "I arrived first. I'm a platinum member, and there is no legitimate reason for me to move." Bradley stepped forward then, towering over both Wayne and Carlton. "Look, I don't know who you are, but I've been sitting in that spot for 15 years. It's where I prepare for my business trips. It's where I make my calls. It's my seat." Imani stood, refusing to be physically intimidated. At 5'7" in heels, she still had to look up at Bradley, but her presence was commanding nonetheless. "Mr. Whitfield, I know exactly who you are," she said evenly. "And while I sympathize with your attachment to this particular chair, the lounge doesn't belong to you. I arrived first. I'm a legitimate member, and I have every right to sit here." Bradley's face flushed red. He turned to Wayne. "Is this how you treat your loyal customers? By letting random people take their seats?" The word random hung in the air, loaded with implication. "Sir, I assure you we're handling the situation," Wayne said quickly before turning back to Imani. "Ms. Johnson, please, as a courtesy to a long-standing member, the answer is no," Imani said firmly, taking out her phone. "And I'd like to be very clear that what's happening right now is discrimination. I'm being asked to move solely because Mr. Whitfield, a white man, wants my seat. I'm documenting this conversation, and I suggest you reconsider your approach." Wayne's expression flashed with panic, then hardened into something more defensive. "That's completely untrue. This has nothing to do with anything like that. It's about respecting our established customers." "Then why wasn't I considered an established customer when I checked in?" Imani challenged. "Why did Carlton question my membership? Why am I being asked to move when there are plenty of other available seats that Mr. Whitfield could choose from?" The tension in the lounge was palpable. Other passengers watched with uncomfortable expressions, but no one intervened. This, too, was familiar to Imani. The silent bystanders, unwilling to get involved even when witnessing obvious injustice. "I'm going to have to ask security to assist us if you continue to be difficult," Wayne said, his tone dropping to a threatening whisper. Imani stood her ground. "Go ahead, call security. I'd love to explain to them how I'm being discriminated against in your establishment." Wayne and Carlton exchanged glances before Wayne pulled out a small radio. "Security to the VIP lounge, please. We have a situation." As they waited for security to arrive, Bradley Whitfield smirked triumphantly, confident in the system that had always bent to accommodate him. Imani remained standing, her heart racing but her exterior calm, continuing to record the interaction on her phone. She had fought too hard and come too far to be bullied out of a seat she had every right to occupy. What none of them realized was just how costly this discrimination was about to become. 2 security officers burst into the VIP lounge within minutes of Wayne's call. The taller one, with a name tag reading Trevor, immediately squared his shoulders and puffed out his chest as he approached. The shorter, stockier officer named Richard flanked him, hand resting unnecessarily on his belt near his taser. "What seems to be the problem here?" Trevor asked, directing his question exclusively to Wayne rather than assessing the situation impartially. "This woman is refusing to comply with staff requests," Wayne explained, gesturing toward Imani as if she were an inanimate object rather than a person standing right beside him. She's causing a disturbance in our VIP area." Trevor turned to Imani, his expression already set in judgment. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your credentials and boarding pass." Imani maintained her composure, though her heart pounded against her ribs. This scene was painfully familiar. Being questioned, her presence deemed suspicious, her legitimacy challenged. It transported her back to her first major tech conference where security had stopped her 3 times while white attendees streamed past unchecked. To the luxury car dealership where the salesperson had asked if she was sure she could afford the vehicle she wanted to purchase. To the high-end restaurant where the maitre d' had tried to seat her near the kitchen despite her reservation for the best table. "Here are my credentials," she said calmly, presenting her platinum membership card and first-class boarding pass. "As I've explained to the staff, I'm a platinum member with every right to be in this lounge and occupy this seat, which I selected upon arrival." Trevor barely glanced at her documents before handing them to Richard, who scrutinized them with exaggerated care, as if searching for evidence of forgery. "How did you obtain this membership?" Richard asked, his tone implying something underhanded. "The same way everyone else does," Imani replied evenly. "I fly frequently for business and qualified for platinum status years ago." From the corner of her eye, Imani could see Bradley Whitfield watching the scene with undisguised satisfaction, swirling a glass of scotch he'd acquired during the confrontation. Several other lounge patrons had discreetly taken out their phones, recording the escalating situation. "The issue," Wayne interjected, "isn't her membership status. It's her refusal to cooperate with staff requests to relocate within the lounge." "Because those requests are discriminatory and unjustified," Imani countered, still recording on her own phone. "There is no policy assigning specific seats to specific members." Trevor's expression darkened. "Ma'am, you need to lower your voice and comply with staff instructions." "I'm speaking at a perfectly normal volume," Imani said, keenly aware of how black women were often characterized as loud or aggressive, regardless of their actual tone. "And I'm documenting this interaction because I'm being discriminated against." "No one is discriminating against you," Richard scoffed. "This is about following lounge protocols." At that moment, a new figure emerged from the lounge entrance, an older white man with a silver wingspan executive pin on his lapel. His name tag identified him as Dennis, airport manager. "What's the situation here?" Dennis asked, his gaze sweeping over the scene before settling on Imani with immediate suspicion. "This passenger is refusing to relocate and is disrupting the lounge experience for our VIP members," Wayne explained quickly. "I see," Dennis said, not bothering to ask for Imani's side of the story. He turned to her with a condescending smile. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but at Silver Wingspan, we have certain expectations for behavior in our exclusive lounges." Imani recognized the patronizing tone immediately. It was the voice used to speak to children or to adults deemed incapable of rational thought. She took a deep breath, pressed the speaker button on her phone, and made a call. "Bennett, it's Imani. I need you on the line right now. I'm being discriminated against at the Silver Wingspan VIP lounge." After a brief moment, an authoritative male voice came through the speaker. "This is Bennett Williams, Chief Legal Counsel for Vertex Innovation Technologies. Who am I speaking with?" Dennis blinked in surprise, but quickly recovered. "This is Dennis Morgan, Airport Manager for Silver Wingspan. There's no discrimination happening here, sir. Your client is refusing to follow staff instructions in a private lounge." "Ms. Johnson is not my client, she's my boss," Bennett corrected sharply. "And I'd like to understand exactly what instructions she's being asked to follow." "She was asked to move to a different seat to accommodate a long-standing member's preference," Wayne explained, suddenly less confident. "I see." Bennett's voice was cold. "And is there a written policy assigning seats based on membership longevity?" "Well, no, but..." "And has Ms. Johnson violated any stated terms of her platinum membership?" "Not technically, but..." "Then I'm struggling to understand the legal basis for threatening her with removal from a lounge she has every right to access," Bennett continued. particularly when the only apparent difference between Ms. Johnson and the member you're preferentially accommodating appears to be race and gender. The word race hung in the air like a thunderclap. Several nearby passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Dennis's face hardened. "That's a serious and unfounded accusation. This has nothing to do with—" "I've heard enough," Bennett interrupted. "Ms. Johnson, are they physically preventing you from remaining in your chosen seat?" "Yes," Imani confirmed. "Security has been called, and I've been threatened with removal." "Dennis," Bennett's voice was razor-sharp, "I strongly advise you to reconsider your actions. Forcibly removing Ms. Johnson would constitute clear discrimination and would result in immediate legal action against Silver Wingspan Airlines, the airport authority, and you personally." Dennis's face flushed with anger. He turned to Trevor and Richard. "Remove her from the lounge. Now. We don't negotiate with threats." "Dennis, you're making a serious mistake," Imani warned, still recording. But it was too late. Trevor stepped forward, deliberately knocking into the small table beside Imani's chair. A full glass of champagne that had been delivered to her earlier toppled over, splashing across her white blouse and navy suit. "Oh, my apologies," Trevor said with transparent insincerity. "Accidents happen when people won't cooperate." Richard moved to Imani's other side, and together, the security officers took her by the arms, lifting her from her seat. The champagne dripped down her clothing as they began marching her toward the exit. "You're assaulting a Platinum member on camera," Imani stated loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You've ruined my clothing and are physically removing me without cause." Lounge patrons watched in shocked silence as Imani Johnson, CEO of a billion-dollar company, was escorted out like a criminal, champagne staining her expensive clothing. Some recorded the incident on their phones. Others averted their eyes in discomfort, but none intervened. As she was pushed through the lounge doors, Imani caught a final glimpse of Bradley Whitfield settling into her vacated seat, raising his scotch glass in a mock toast to Wayne and Dennis. Outside in the main terminal, Trevor and Richard released her arms. "You can wait for your flight in the general boarding area," Trevor told her with a dismissive gesture. "And consider yourself lucky we're not banning you from the airline altogether." As they walked away, Imani stood alone in the busy terminal, champagne dripping from her ruined clothes, her dignity assaulted, but her resolve hardening. The Tokyo deal, the culmination of years of work, was now in jeopardy. Her presentation clothes were ruined. Her carefully planned pre-flight preparation time was lost. But as passengers walked past, some staring openly at her disheveled appearance, others pretending not to notice, Imani Johnson made a decision. This would not stand. Not anymore. Not to her. Not to anyone. With shaking hand, she texted her executive team. "Emergency video conference, now. Silver Wingspan just made the biggest mistake of their corporate life." Have you ever been discriminated against and felt powerless in the moment? Comment number 1 if you've experienced unfair treatment based on your race or gender. Hit like if you believe businesses should face serious consequences for allowing discrimination. Subscribe to see more stories of justice being served against corporate bullies. How would you have responded in Imani's position? And what do you think she's planning to do next with her powerful connections? Stay tuned to find out how this CEO turned humiliation into her greatest power move yet. Imani Johnson slipped into a family restroom in the terminal, locking the door behind her. Her hands trembled slightly as she unzipped her carry-on bag and pulled out a spare blouse. Black silk. Not the crisp white she'd planned to wear, but it would have to do. Years of business travel had taught her to always pack alternatives. As she changed out of her champagne-soaked clothes, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes burned with a quiet fury, but her face remained composed. This controlled rage had fueled her entire career, channeling indignity into action, humiliation into power. "Siri, call executive team emergency conference," she instructed her phone, which was propped against the sink. Within minutes, her senior leadership appeared on the screen in a grid. Carmen Rodriguez, VP of Finance, her sharp features framed by a sleek bob. Bennett Williams, legal director, his bow tie slightly askew as if he'd been rushing. Wesley Chen, operations chief, his typically calm demeanor replaced by concerned alertness. "What happened?" Carmen asked immediately, noting Imani's changed clothing and the bathroom backdrop. Imani recounted the events in the lounge with clinical precision, emotion stripped from her voice as she outlined each discriminatory action, each microaggression, each escalation. "They physically removed you?" Wesley asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I'm a black woman sitting in a white man's preferred chair," Imani replied simply. "But they've made a critical error in judgment." Bennett nodded, already typing furiously on his laptop. "Multiple errors. First, the physical assault. Second, the clear discrimination. Third," he looked up with grim satisfaction, "they apparently have no idea who you are, or that Vertex owns 28% of Silver Wingspan's stock." A moment of stunned silence followed this revelation. "The aeronautics investment portfolio," Carmen breathed, recognition dawning. "The diversification strategy we implemented last quarter." "Exactly," Imani confirmed. "Through our holding company, we're their largest individual shareholder. A fact that Dennis and his discrimination enablers are about to learn." Wesley's fingers flew across his keyboard. "I'm pulling up Silver Wingspan's history right now. This isn't their first rodeo. There are 37 discrimination complaints filed against them in the past 3 years alone. 11 specifically mentioning the VIP lounges. 3 naming Dennis Morgan directly." "And Bradley Whitfield?" Imani asked. "The competitor they're bending over backward to accommodate?" Carmen switched screens. "Whitfield Technologies, direct competitor for the Tokyo contract. They've been losing market share to us for the past 18 months. Their security protocol is essentially a copycat of our earlier generation system, but with significant vulnerabilities we've since addressed." "So they bumped me for a competitor who's actively trying to steal our Tokyo deal," Imani summarized. "Interesting." She checked her watch. Her flight would board in 45 minutes, not much time to execute what she was planning. "Here's what we're going to do," she said, her voice taking on the commanding tone that had guided Vertex through countless challenges. "Bennett, prepare for an emergency shareholder meeting. As 28% stakeholders, we have the right to call one. Document everything about today's incident and compile all previous discrimination complaints." Bennett nodded, already drafting documents. "Carmen, contact our investment team. I want to know if we can acquire more shares, and I want a complete valuation of Silver Wingspan's vulnerabilities. Also, prepare a statement for our investors explaining how this incident affects our Tokyo strategy." "On it," Carmen confirmed. "Wesley, find me a private room in this terminal where I can participate in a board meeting. Then contact Senator Washington. She sits on the Transportation Committee and has been wanting evidence of discriminatory practices in the airline industry. Tell her I'll call her personally from the plane." Wesley was already texting. "Senator Washington is actually in town for a fundraiser tonight. She might be able to meet you at the airport." "Perfect," Imani replied. "One more thing. I need all of you to join an emergency board meeting in 30 minutes. We need official approval for what I'm about to do." As her team dispersed to execute their tasks, Imani packed her soiled clothes into a plastic bag and straightened her appearance. The champagne had left her hair slightly damp on one side, but she smoothed it back into its elegant style. She applied fresh lipstick, deep red, the color of power and determination. Wesley texted her the location of an unclaimed airline office where she could conduct her meeting privately. As she made her way through the terminal, she noticed whispers and pointing. Videos of her removal from the lounge were already circulating on social media. Silver Wingspan discrimination was trending in the region. The small office Wesley had secured was barely more than a desk and 3 chairs, but it would serve her purpose. Imani connected her laptop and watched as her board members joined the emergency video session one by one. These were the people who had believed in her vision from the beginning, who had invested in Vertex when others had dismissed her. "The situation is straightforward," Imani explained after briefing them. "Silver Wingspan Airlines has engaged in blatant discrimination against me as their customer and, by extension, against our company. I propose we use our position as their largest individual shareholder to force immediate accountability. Roberta Chang, one of her earliest investors, spoke first. What exactly are you proposing, Imani? A clean sweep, Imani replied without hesitation. Using our shares and the support of other institutional investors, we call for the immediate removal of everyone involved in today's incident, from the CEO down to the security officers who assaulted me. We implement new anti-discrimination policies throughout the airline, and we make it clear that this type of behavior has real consequences. That's aggressive, Michael Okafor, another board member, noted, but appropriate given the circumstances. The question is timing. Immediate, Imani said firmly. I want the emergency shareholder meeting called before I land in Tokyo. I want the airline scrambling while I'm securing the deal they just tried to help our competitor steal. The vote was unanimous. The board authorized Imani to take whatever actions she deemed necessary to address the discrimination and protect the company's interests. As Imani prepared to board her flight, her phone buzzed with news alerts. The videos had gone viral. Boycott Silver Wingspan was trending nationally. Major news networks were reaching out for comments. At the gate, Imani noticed the flight attendants whispering and glancing in her direction. Word had spread. As she handed over her boarding pass, the gate agent's hand trembled slightly. "Ms. Johnson, we've upgraded you to our premium first-class suite," the agent said, her voice unnaturally high. "With our sincere apologies for any inconvenience earlier." "The inconvenience of being physically removed from your lounge because of my race?" Imani asked calmly. "Is that the inconvenience you're referring to?" The gate agent blanched. I'm not authorized to comment on that situation, but we hope you'll enjoy the upgraded accommodations." Imani accepted the new boarding pass without further comment. As she waited to board, her phone rang. Senator Gloria Washington. "Imani," the senator's authoritative voice came through clearly. "I just saw the videos. This is exactly the evidence we've been waiting for. How are you holding up?" "I'm focused on what comes next," Imani replied. "How quickly can you convene a transportation committee hearing on airline discrimination?" "With this footage, I can have preliminary hearings announced by the time you land in Tokyo. This is textbook discrimination captured in high definition. But are you sure you want to pursue this while you're closing your deal?" "Senator," Imani said, watching as first-class boarding was announced, "I've spent my entire career being told to wait for the right time to address discrimination. There is no right time. The time is always now." As she ended the call and prepared to board, Imani received a text from Bennett. "Emergency shareholder meeting set for tomorrow, 9 a.m. EST, 10 p.m. Tokyo time. Current CEO Lawrence Anderson is being recalled from vacation in Aspen. Stock already down 4% in after-hours trading on discrimination reports." Imani smiled slightly as she settled into her premium suite on the aircraft. The flight attendants hovered anxiously, offering champagne and amenities with trembling hands. They'd clearly been warned about their important passenger. "Is there anything at all we can do for you, Ms. Johnson?" the chief flight attendant asked, her professional smile strained. "Yes," Imani replied, opening her laptop to prepare for the Tokyo presentation. "You can inform your corporate leadership that I expect to see them all tomorrow at the emergency shareholder meeting. Every single person involved in today's incident should be prepared to explain their actions." As the plane taxied toward the runway, Imani looked out the window at the Silver Wingspan terminal growing smaller in the distance. By the time she returned from Tokyo, it would be a very different airline. She would make sure of that. At 35,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean, Imani Johnson's humiliation was transforming into a worldwide movement. The moment the plane's Wi-Fi connected, her tablet and phone exploded with notifications. Videos of her confrontation and forcible removal from the Silver Wingspan lounge had spread across social media platforms with the speed and force of a digital tsunami. "Boycott Silver Wingspan has reached 1 million mentions in the past hour," reported Carmen during their secure video check-in. And "I'm with Imani" is trending number 3 worldwide. Imani scrolled through the footage that was circulating online. Multiple passengers had captured the incident from different angles. One particularly damning video clearly showed Trevor deliberately knocking over the champagne before he and Richard physically removed her. Another caught Bradley Whitfield's smug expression as he settled into her vacated seat, raising his glass in a mock toast. "The internet has identified everyone," Wesley added. "Carlton Peters, lounge receptionist; Wayne Simmons, lounge manager; Trevor Barnes and Richard Gould, security officers; Dennis Morgan, airport manager; and of course Bradley Whitfield of Whitfield Technologies. They're all being inundated with messages." "And Silver Wingspan's response?" Imani asked, her voice steady despite the turbulence the plane had encountered. Bennett shared his screen, displaying a hastily issued statement from Silver Wingspan's corporate communications team. "Silver Wingspan Airlines is aware of a situation that occurred in our VIP lounge today. We are investigating the circumstances and remain committed to providing excellent service to all our valued customers. We take all allegations seriously and will address this matter internally." "Boilerplate damage control," Bennett scoffed. Meanwhile, their stock has dropped 7% since markets opened in response to the videos and boycott calls. Imani nodded, unsurprised. "And Lawrence Anderson?" Lawrence Anderson, the CEO of Silver Wingspan, had been enjoying a ski vacation in Aspen when the crisis erupted. According to reports, he had immediately boarded his private jet and was currently flying back to handle the situation personally. "Too little, too late," Carmen commented. "Social media users have already uncovered his history of ignoring discrimination complaints. A former HR director for Silver Wingspan is giving interviews claiming Anderson personally quashed multiple internal reports about preferential treatment for white male executives in their lounges." As they spoke, a news alert appeared on Imani's screen. CNN was running a special report on the incident, featuring interviews with discrimination experts and aviation industry analysts. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Black female CEO removed from airline lounge to accommodate white male. Racial discrimination or misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding about what happened," Imani said firmly. "The videos speak for themselves." Indeed, witnesses from the lounge had begun sharing their accounts online. A college professor who had been seated nearby posted a detailed Twitter thread describing how Imani had been unfairly targeted despite her platinum status. A flight attendant from another airline anonymously claimed that Silver Wingspan had an unwritten Platinum Plus policy that gave preferential treatment to certain executives, predominantly white males. Meanwhile, Bradley Whitfield was facing his own backlash. As his identity spread online, internet sleuths quickly connected him to Whitfield Technologies and its competition with Vertex for the Tokyo contract. Whitfield's company stock had dropped nearly 12% as investors worried about the potential fallout from his involvement in the discrimination incident. Bradley's company has issued a statement trying to distance themselves from his personal actions, Wesley reported. But it's not gaining much traction. Their Japanese partners are particularly concerned about the association with such a public discrimination incident. Imani allowed herself a small smile. Japanese business culture placed enormous emphasis on respect and avoiding public embarrassment. Bradley's actions would not be viewed favorably by the very executives he was trying to impress. Her phone buzzed with a message from Senator Washington. "Transportation Committee emergency session scheduled for next Tuesday. Subpoenas being prepared for Silver Wingspan executives. This stops now." As the crisis unfolded in real time, Silver Wingspan's attempts to control the narrative grew increasingly desperate. Their social media team posted a longer statement claiming commitment to diversity and inclusion, alongside photos of their multicultural staff, only to face immediate backlash when several former employees identified themselves in those photos and shared their own stories of discrimination at the airline. "It's getting worse for them by the minute," Carmen noted. 3 competing airlines have publicly denounced Silver Wingspan's actions and offered you lifetime VIP status on their carriers. Imani checked the time. Still several hours until they landed in Tokyo. She needed to refocus on the presentation that awaited her, the $750 million deal that had been the original purpose of this journey. "Keep monitoring the situation," she instructed her team. "But I need to prepare for Tokyo. We didn't come this far to lose focus on our primary objective. The flight attendants had been treating Imani with extraordinary deference since takeoff, clearly aware of who she was and what had happened. The chief attendant approached her seat cautiously. "Ms. Johnson, the captain asked me to inform you that we've received a message from our corporate headquarters," she said, her voice professional but strained. "CEO Anderson has requested to speak with you upon landing." "I'm sure he has," Imani replied evenly. "Please inform the captain that Mr. Anderson can address his concerns at tomorrow's emergency shareholder meeting. Until then, I have a business deal to prepare for." The attendant nodded quickly and retreated. As she walked away, Imani noticed other passengers watching her with newfound recognition. Some nodded respectfully, others seemed to be surreptitiously taking photos. The story had clearly reached the plane. Her phone buzzed again with an update from Bennett. "Senator Washington has expanded her investigation. Federal Aviation Administration now involved, examining Silver Wingspan's compliance with anti-discrimination regulations for all airlines receiving federal airport privileges." The consequences were spiraling far beyond what Dennis, Wayne, and the others could have possibly imagined when they decided to remove her from that lounge seat. A momentary flex of discriminatory power was turning into an industry-wide reckoning. As Imani worked on her presentation, occasionally checking the unfolding crisis, she reflected on the countless smaller indignities she and others had endured that never went viral, never resulted in consequences. For every Imani Johnson with the power and platform to fight back, there were thousands who suffered in silence, who moved seats, who accepted the daily humiliations because they lacked the resources to challenge them. That thought steeled her resolve. This wasn't just about one seat in one lounge. It was about establishing that discrimination carried real, significant consequences, even for powerful corporations, even for privileged executives who had never faced them before. By the time the plane began its descent into Tokyo, #Silver Wingspan discrimination had been mentioned over 5 million times across social platforms. News crews were waiting at the Tokyo airport, alerted to Imani's arrival and eager for her statement about the incident that had captured global attention. But Imani Johnson had a presentation to deliver and a contract to secure. The reckoning for Silver Wingspan would continue without her immediate attention. She had set the wheels in motion. Now they would turn inexorably toward justice, grinding down every person who had participated in her humiliation. As the plane touched down in Tokyo, Imani straightened her black silk blouse, checked her appearance one final time, and prepared to step into another arena where she would once again have to prove herself exceptional. The difference was that this time, the whole world was watching, and many were finally seeing the reality she had navigated her entire life. The moment Imani Johnson stepped into the arrivals terminal at Tokyo's Haneda Airport, she was met with a sea of cameras and reporters. News of the Silver Wingspan incident had crossed international boundaries, becoming not just an American story about discrimination, but a global conversation about power, race, and accountability. "Ms. Johnson, can you comment on the Silver Wingspan incident?" called out a reporter from Japan Today. "Will you be taking legal action against the airline?" shouted another from an international news agency. Imani paused briefly, composed as always. "I'm in Tokyo for an important business meeting. What happened at Silver Wingspan reflects a systemic problem that exists in many industries. My focus right now is on my company's innovations and our Japanese partnerships. Thank you." With that measured response, she moved through the crowd with dignified purpose, her team of Japanese associates guiding her efficiently to a waiting car. Inside the vehicle, Imani checked her phone. The presentation for Vertex's AI security system was scheduled for 2 p.m. at the Tokyo International Finance Center. She had 4 hours to prepare and center herself. "Johnson-san," her Japanese liaison Kenji Tanaka said respectfully, "the executives are very impressed with your handling of the airline situation. Such dignity under pressure speaks volumes about your character." Imani nodded appreciatively. In Japanese business culture, how one conducted oneself in challenging situations was often considered as important as technical capabilities or financial terms. Unintentionally, the silver wingspan incident had actually enhanced her standing with the Japanese executives. The news has been covering it extensively here, Kenji continued. Many Japanese people are expressing support for you online. There is particular outrage that this happened to a CEO traveling for international business. Thank you, Kenji, Imani replied. I appreciate the support, but I want to ensure we remain focused on today's presentation. Has there been any word from our competition? Kenji's expression shifted slightly. Whitfield-san arrived yesterday, but there are complications. After the video became public, several executives expressed discomfort meeting with him. His presentation has been rescheduled twice already. Imani absorbed this information without visible reaction, though inwardly she recognized the shift in momentum. Bradley Whitfield's actions in that lounge had not only caused her temporary humiliation, but were now actively damaging his business prospects in a culture that prized respect and harmony. At the hotel, Imani refreshed herself and changed into her backup presentation outfit, a tailored charcoal suit with subtle jade accessories that her team had previously researched would be well received by Japanese executives. As she prepared, updates continued to flood her phone. Silver wingspan stock down 12%, read a text from Carmen. Emergency board meeting in progress. CEO Lawrence Anderson has issued a video apology, but it's being criticized as insincere and inadequate. Another message from Bennett. We now control 32% of Silver Wingspan stock. Additional investors have pledged support for leadership changes. We have the votes. Imani allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction before refocusing on the task at hand. The Tokyo deal represented the culmination of years of innovation and strategy. While Silver Wingspan would face consequences, her primary mission remained securing this contract. At 1:45 p.m., Imani arrived at the Tokyo International Finance Center, an architectural marvel of glass and steel in the heart of the city's business district. She was escorted to a preparation room where her local team awaited. Johnson-san, Akiko Yamamoto, her lead Japanese engineer, greeted her with a deep bow. Everything is prepared for the presentation. The executives have allocated an additional 30 minutes for questions, which is a very positive sign. The presentation room was imposing, a vast conference space with tiered seating filled with over 30 executives from Japan's largest financial institutions, government agencies, and technology firms. At the center of the front row sat Hiroshi Nakamura, the legendary CEO of Japan's largest banking conglomerate and the primary decision-maker for the contract. As Imani was introduced, she noted with interest that several executives were watching her with particular attention, some even nodding slightly in what appeared to be respect. The incident had preceded her, creating an unexpected backdrop of sympathy and interest. For the next 90 minutes, Imani led the executives through Vertex's revolutionary AI security system. She demonstrated how their technology could protect financial systems from even the most sophisticated cyber attacks, seamlessly switching between detailed technical explanations and broader strategic implications. Her Japanese was limited but respectfully employed at key moments, showing cultural awareness that was clearly appreciated. Our system detected and neutralized 100% of penetration attempts in blind testing, Imani explained, displaying the results on the massive screen behind her. This included previously unknown attack vectors, specifically designed to target financial infrastructure. The questions that followed were rigorous and technically demanding, exactly what Imani had prepared for. She fielded each one with precision and confidence, occasionally deferring to her technical specialists for specific implementation details while maintaining overall command of the presentation. As the session concluded, Hiroshi Nakamura himself stood to address her, an unusual and significant gesture. Johnson-san, he began formally, your presentation was most impressive, but equally impressive is your character. We have all seen the unfortunate incident that occurred before your journey here. Many would have canceled or postponed such an important meeting after such treatment. Your professionalism speaks volumes about you and your company. Imani bowed respectfully. Thank you, Nakamura-san. In business as in life, we must sometimes overcome obstacles to achieve important goals. This partnership is too valuable to delay. A murmur of approval rippled through the assembled executives. "We will need some time to deliberate," Nakamura continued. "But I can inform you that Whitfield Technologies' presentation earlier today was insufficient for our needs. We will contact you very soon with our decision." As the meeting concluded and the executives filed out, Kenji approached Imani with barely contained excitement. "Johnson-san," he whispered, "that was extraordinary. Nakamura-san never comments on deliberations in progress. The contract is virtually yours." Imani maintained her composure until she reached the privacy of her car. Only then did she allow herself a moment of exultation, closing her eyes briefly to acknowledge the magnitude of what she had accomplished. Her phone rang. It was Carmen calling from the emergency board meeting of Silver Wingspan. "We did it," Carmen announced without preamble. "The board has voted to remove Lawrence Anderson as CEO, effective immediately. Dennis Morgan has been terminated, along with Wayne Simmons. The security officers Trevor and Carlton have been suspended pending further investigation." "Good," Imani replied. "And the shareholder meeting tomorrow?" "Still proceeding as planned. There's significant support for a complete overhaul of their discrimination policies and mandatory training for all staff. Your grandmother would be proud, Imani. This is going to change things for a lot of people." The mention of her grandmother, the woman who had told her to be twice as good to get half as far, brought unexpected emotion to Imani's throat. She swallowed it down, focusing instead on the next steps. "Send me the full report on Silver Wingspan's discrimination history," she instructed. "I want to review everything before tomorrow's meeting." As her car navigated Tokyo's busy streets back to the hotel, Imani received another call, this time from Hiroshi Nakamura's executive assistant. "Johnson-san," the assistant said formally, "Nakamura-san has requested your presence at a private dinner this evening. This is highly unusual and considered a great honor." Imani accepted graciously, recognizing the significance of the invitation. In Japanese business culture, such a dinner typically preceded major agreements. At her hotel, a message awaited from Senator Washington. "Hearing set for next week. FAA investigating Silver Wingspan's compliance with federal anti-discrimination regulations." "This is going to be industry-changing, Imani. You've started something important." That evening, as Imani dined with Nakamura and two other senior executives at an exclusive restaurant overlooking Tokyo Bay, the conversation eventually turned to the airline incident. "In Japan," Nakamura said thoughtfully, "we have a concept called gaman, enduring the seemingly unbearable with patience and dignity. You demonstrated this quality admirably, Johnson-san, but you also showed something equally important: the courage to demand accountability." "Balance is essential," Imani replied. "Dignity without action allows injustice to continue. Action without dignity can diminish one's message." Nakamura nodded appreciatively at her wisdom. As the meal concluded, he raised his glass in a toast. "To new partnerships," he said meaningfully. "I am pleased to inform you that the contract will be awarded to Vertex Innovation Technologies. The formal announcement will come tomorrow, but I wanted you to know personally this evening, $750 million. The largest contract in Vertex's history. And despite Silver Wingspan's discrimination, despite Bradley Whitfield's entitlement, despite every obstacle thrown in her path, Imani Johnson had succeeded." As she returned to her hotel to prepare for the Silver Wingspan shareholder meeting that would take place via video conference in a few hours, Imani felt a rare moment of complete validation. The airline that had humiliated her was facing a reckoning. The competitor who had smirked as she was removed was leaving Tokyo empty-handed, and her company had secured a deal that would transform its future. Have you ever witnessed a powerful person turn discrimination into strength? Comment number 1. If you believe Imani's response to being mistreated is inspiring businesses to do better. Like this video if you think more companies should face real consequences for discrimination. Subscribe to see how Imani transforms an entire airline industry in the next part of this story. What would you do if you were in Nakamura's position? Would you have awarded the contract to Imani's company after seeing how she handled adversity? The corporate showdown is just beginning, and you won't believe what happens next. 3 days after her triumph in Tokyo, Imani Johnson's private jet touched down at her home airport. The same terminal where she had been humiliated now awaited her return with trepidation. In the days since the incident, Silver Wingspan Airlines had transformed from a respected carrier to the centerpiece of a national conversation about corporate discrimination. As Imani descended the steps of her jet, she noticed the stark difference in reception. Where there had once been dismissive security officers, there now stood a nervous contingent of airline executives. The interim CEO, Patricia Alvarez, appointed hastily after Lawrence Anderson's removal, stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Ms. Johnson, welcome back. I hope we can speak privately before the shareholder meeting." Imani regarded her coolly. "The time for private conversations has passed, Ms. Alvarez. I'll see you at the meeting." Her driver whisked her directly to Silver Wingspan's corporate headquarters, a gleaming 30-story building downtown. The emergency shareholder meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m., and despite jet lag from her Tokyo flight, Imani was razor-sharp and prepared. In the lobby, she met with her executive team and legal counsel, all of whom had been working tirelessly during her absence. "Every major investor is attending," Bennett informed her. "With our 32% stake and the additional shareholders who've pledged support, we control nearly 60% of the voting shares. The board can't block any reasonable proposal we put forward." Carmen added, "They're desperate to contain this. Their stock has fallen 23% since the incident. Major corporate clients are threatening to cancel their bulk travel contracts. The damage is already in the hundreds of millions." "And the employees involved?" Imani asked. "Dennis Morgan was terminated immediately," Wesley replied. "Wayne Simmons as well. The security officers Trevor Barnes and Richard Gould were placed on administrative leave, but there's been no final decision on their status. Carlton Peters, the receptionist, received a written warning but remains employed." Imani nodded, absorbing the information. Not enough. Not nearly enough. The boardroom on the 30th floor was tense when Imani entered. Around the massive mahogany table sat the 12 members of Silver Wingspan's board of directors, along with key executives and major shareholders. Lawrence Anderson, the recently ousted CEO, had been permitted to attend but sat at the far end of the table, his face ashen. Patricia Alvarez opened the meeting with a prepared statement. "We've convened this emergency session to address the unfortunate incident involving Ms. Johnson, and to take decisive action to ensure nothing similar ever occurs again. Silver Wingspan is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's dispense with the corporate platitudes," Imani interrupted calmly. "This meeting was called because your employees discriminated against me, physically removed me from your lounge, and deliberately damaged my clothing, all while being recorded from multiple angles. The videos have been viewed over 70 million times. Your stock is in free fall, and unfortunate incident doesn't begin to describe what happened." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. "We've already taken significant steps," Board Chairman William Fletcher interjected. "The CEO has been removed. The manager and airport director responsible have been terminated. We've issued public apologies and are implementing enhanced training." "Enhanced training," Imani repeated skeptically. "Let's be clear about something. This wasn't a training issue. Your employees didn't discriminate against me because they lacked proper training. They did it because your corporate culture not only permits but encourages preferential treatment based on race and gender." She opened a leather portfolio and removed a stack of documents, which her team distributed around the table. "This is a comprehensive report detailing 43 separate discrimination complaints against Silver Wingspan in the past 3 years alone. 11 specifically mention the VIP lounges, 3 named Dennis Morgan directly. None resulted in significant corrective action." The board members flipped through the documents with growing discomfort. "Where did you get these files?" Patricia Alvarez asked, her voice strained. "Your former HR director Diana Chen provided them," Bennett replied. "She attempted to address these issues internally for years before leaving the company. She's now prepared to testify before Senator Washington's Transportation Committee about the systematic suppression of discrimination complaints. Imani stood, commanding the room's complete attention. I'd like to call in some additional participants to this meeting. At her signal, Wesley opened the boardroom door. In walked Dennis Morgan, Wayne Simmons, Trevor Barnes, Richard Gould, and Carlton Peters, all the employees directly involved in the lounge incident. Their expressions ranged from defiant to terrified as they took seats at a side table. These individuals carried out the discrimination, Imani said, but they didn't create the environment that made it possible. That responsibility lies with everyone in this room who ignored previous incidents, who created unwritten policies favoring certain customers over others, who looked the other way when complaints were filed. Lawrence Anderson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The airline industry is competitive. Our platinum members expect certain courtesies. Courtesies? Imani's voice was sharp. Is that what you call forcing a qualified platinum member to give up her seat for a white man? Is that what you call having security officers physically remove her while deliberately spilling champagne on her clothes? Are those the courtesies your preferred customers expect? Anderson fell silent, his defense withering under her precise articulation of what had actually occurred. Imani turned her attention to Dennis Morgan. Mr. Morgan, this report indicates you've been named in 3 previous discrimination complaints. In each case, the complaint was dismissed without investigation. Would you care to explain? Morgan straightened defensively. Those complaints were without merit. Customers sometimes use discrimination claims when they don't get their way. Without merit, Imani repeated. Just like my complaint would have been dismissed as without merit if multiple passengers hadn't recorded the incident. Is that correct? Morgan's silence was damning. Imani addressed Wayne next. Mr. Simmons, can you explain the unwritten policy of giving certain platinum members priority over others? Wayne shifted nervously. There's no official policy. It's just that some members they spend more, fly more frequently. Bradley Whitfield, Imani stated flatly. The man you accommodated by removing me. Did you verify that he actually spent more or flew more frequently than I do before deciding he deserved my seat? Well, no, but he's a longtime member. I've been a member for 8 years. I fly internationally at least twice monthly. My company books over $5 million in annual travel with Silver Wingspan. Did you know any of that before deciding I was less deserving of that seat? Wayne looked at the table. No, ma'am. Imani turned to the security officers. Trevor and Richard, you chose to physically remove me despite seeing my valid credentials. You deliberately spilled champagne on my clothing. What part of your training suggested that was appropriate? Trevor attempted bravado. We were following orders from management. It's not our job to question following orders. Imani cut him off. The defense of those who lack the moral courage to refuse unjust instructions. Did either of you consider for even a moment that what you were doing might be wrong? Both men remained silent. Finally, Imani addressed Carlton, the receptionist who had first questioned her presence. You were the first point of contact, Mr. Peters. You set this entire chain of events in motion by questioning my platinum status despite seeing my valid card. Why? Carlton swallowed hard. It was just unusual. Unusual to see a black woman as a platinum member, Imani finished for him. Despite the card in my hand, despite my name on your computer screen, you found it unusual enough to alert your manager. The discomfort in the room was palpable. These confrontations were laying bare the unconscious biases and systemic discrimination that had been normalized within the company culture. Imani returned her attention to the board. Now that we've established the facts, let's discuss solutions. As the representative of Vertex Innovation Technologies, holding 32% of Silver Wingspan's shares, I propose the following actions. She outlined a comprehensive plan. Immediate termination of all employees involved in the incident. Establishment of an independent review board for discrimination complaints. Mandatory anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff. Revision of all VIP lounge policies to ensure equitable treatment. and the appointment of a chief diversity officer reporting directly to the board. Additionally, she continued, I nominate Zara Williams to fill the vacant CEO position. Murmurs rippled through the room. Zara Williams was a highly respected aviation executive who had previously been passed over for leadership roles despite her stellar qualifications. Ms. Williams is black, Board Chairman Fletcher noted awkwardly. Yes, she is, Imani agreed. She's also a 20-year industry veteran with an MBA from Wharton, experience as COO of 2 regional carriers, and a proven track record of operational excellence. The fact that you immediately noted her race rather than her qualifications perfectly illustrates the problem we're addressing today. Fletcher flushed with embarrassment. I call for an immediate vote on these proposals, Imani concluded. What followed was a formality. With Imani's substantial shareholding and the support of other investors outraged by the discrimination and subsequent stock decline, the measures passed overwhelmingly. Lawrence Anderson watched in stunned silence as his legacy was dismantled in a single afternoon. As the meeting concluded, Imani approached Dennis, Wayne, Trevor, Richard, and Carlton, who had been sitting in humiliated silence throughout the vote. You're all terminated, effective immediately, she informed them. Human Resources will process your paperwork downstairs. Your company credentials are already deactivated. Dennis rose angrily. This is excessive. One incident captured on camera, Imani corrected him. How many others went unrecorded? How many people did you humiliate who didn't have the platform or resources to fight back? This isn't excessive, it's accountability. As they were escorted from the boardroom, Imani turned to address the remaining executives and board members. Silver Wingspan has an opportunity to transform itself from a cautionary tale into a model for corporate accountability. The changes we've approved today are just the beginning. The world is watching how we proceed from here. Patricia Alvarez approached Imani as the meeting dispersed. Ms. Johnson, would you consider taking a more active role in our transformation? Perhaps joining the board yourself? Imani shook her head. My company requires my full attention, especially with our new Tokyo contract. But I'll be watching Silver Wingspan's progress very carefully. As a major shareholder, I have a vested interest in seeing these changes implemented effectively. As she left the boardroom, Bennett fell into step beside her. That was masterful, he said quietly. But there will be backlash. Some will say you went too far. And others will say, I didn't go far enough, Imani replied. Discrimination persists because consequences are rare. Today, there were consequences. Outside the Silver Wingspan headquarters, a crowd of reporters awaited. Camera flashes erupted as Imani emerged from the building. She paused briefly at the microphones. Today, Silver Wingspan took important steps toward addressing systemic discrimination within its corporate culture, she stated. As a shareholder and as a customer who experienced this discrimination firsthand, I'm cautiously optimistic about these changes, but the work of creating truly equitable spaces never ends. It requires constant vigilance and a willingness to hold power accountable. As questions shouted from every direction, Imani stepped into her waiting car. Through the window, she caught a glimpse of Dennis, Wayne, Trevor, Richard, and Carlton exiting through a side door, carrying boxes of personal belongings, their faces a mix of anger and shock as they faced the consequences of their actions for perhaps the first time in their professional lives. The corporate showdown had ended in decisive victory. But for Imani Johnson, this was never about winning a single battle. It was about changing the rules of engagement for everyone who would come after her. 1 week after the emergency shareholder meeting, Imani Johnson returned to Silver Wingspan headquarters. This time, she wasn't there as an aggrieved customer or an assertive shareholder. She had requested, and been granted, the opportunity to personally address the employees involved in her discrimination before their termination became final. The former Silver Wingspan employees waited nervously in a sterile conference room on the 25th floor. Trevor Barnes and Richard Gould, the security officers who had physically removed Imani from the lounge, sat stiffly in their chairs, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Wayne Simmons, the former lounge manager, repeatedly straightened his tie, a nervous habit betraying his anxiety. Carlton Peters, the receptionist, stared at his hands folded on the table. Dennis Morgan, once the powerful airport manager, had positioned himself at the head of the table, a final grasp at the authority he no longer possessed. The door opened, and Imani entered, followed by Brenda Martinez, Silver Wingspan's HR director, and Bennett Williams, Vertex's legal counsel. The room fell silent as Imani took her seat, placing a slim portfolio on the table before her. "Thank you for coming," Imani began, her voice calm and measured. "I wanted to speak with you directly before your employment situations are finalized." Dennis straightened defensively. "If this is supposed to be some kind of apology session..." "It's not," Imani cut him off firmly. "This isn't about apologies. It's about understanding." She opened her portfolio and removed 5 slim files. "I've reviewed each of your employment histories with Silver Wingspan. Collectively, you represent 47 years of service to this airline. That's a significant investment of your lives." The former employees shifted uncomfortably, unprepared for this approach. "Before we discuss what happened in that lounge," Imani continued, "I want to share something with you." She paused, collecting her thoughts. "When I was 12 years old, my father took me to buy my first professional dress for a school presentation. We went to an upscale department store, the kind my family rarely shopped at. While my father was looking at the men's ties, a security guard followed me around the juniors section, watching my every move. When I took 3 dresses to the fitting room, the attendant counted them aloud, then announced she'd be checking to make sure I returned with all 3. No other customers received this treatment." Imani's gaze moved around the table, making brief eye contact with each person. "That was my first experience with being treated as inherently suspicious because of my race, but it wasn't my last. In college, campus security stopped me multiple times walking to my own dorm. At my first tech job, a colleague suggested I must have been hired to fill a quota. When I bought my first luxury car, the salesman asked repeatedly if I was sure I could afford it, despite my perfect credit score and substantial down payment." Trevor shifted uncomfortably in his seat, while Carlton suddenly found the ceiling interesting. "Each of these incidents seems small in isolation," Imani continued. "Many people would say I should just let it go or not make everything about race. But these experiences accumulate over a lifetime. They create a burden that people who've never faced them cannot fully comprehend." She turned to Wayne. "Mr. Simmons, when Bradley Whitfield complained about his seat being taken, what was your first thought?" Wayne hesitated. "That we needed to accommodate a long-time customer." "And when you saw who was occupying the seat?" A longer pause. I assumed you weren't a regular." "Despite my platinum card? Despite my first-class boarding pass?" Wayne looked down. "Yes." Imani nodded. "Carlton, when I presented my platinum card at reception, you double-checked it in the system. Do you do that for all platinum members?" Carlton swallowed. "Not all of them, no. Who do you typically double-check?" "People who don't look like our usual platinum members." "And what do your usual platinum members look like?" Carlton's voice was barely audible. "Mostly older white men in business suits." Imani turned to Dennis. "Mr. Morgan, when you arrived at the lounge, did you ask for my version of events before deciding I needed to be removed?" Dennis straightened defensively. "The staff had already... A simple yes or no will suffice." "No," Dennis admitted reluctantly. "Trevor and Richard," Imani addressed the security officers directly. "When you spilled champagne on my clothing, was that accidental?" Trevor's jaw tightened. "It just happened during the escort process." "I see," Imani said, not pressing further, but making it clear she didn't believe him. "Let me ask all of you. If I had been a middle-aged white man in a suit, would any of this have happened?" The silence in the room was deafening. Finally, Wayne spoke up. "Probably not," he admitted quietly. Imani nodded, acknowledging his honesty. "That's the definition of discrimination. Different treatment based not on relevant factors like membership status or behavior, but on immutable characteristics like race and gender. She closed her portfolio and leaned forward slightly. I'm not here to debate whether discrimination occurred. The videos make that abundantly clear. I'm here because I want you to understand the consequences of your actions, not just for me, but for yourselves, and for every person who experiences discrimination in spaces where they have every right to be. Dennis Morgan, still clinging to his self-image as the wronged party, interjected. With all due respect, Ms. Johnson, this seems excessive. We made a mistake in how we handled the situation. But to terminate careers over one incident, one recorded incident, Imani corrected. But the report I presented to the board detailed a pattern of similar complaints that were systematically dismissed. How many black passengers were removed from that lounge before smartphones made it impossible to deny? How many women were told to give up their seats for male executives without the corporate power to fight back? Dennis fell silent. Brenda Martinez, the HR director, spoke up. I've personally reviewed 17 similar complaints filed internally in the past 2 years. All were dismissed without full investigation. 9 specifically mentioned preferential treatment for certain male executives in our lounges. The former employees exchanged uncomfortable glances, the scale of the problem becoming clearer. I believe in accountability, Imani stated firmly. Actions have consequences. The consequences for me included public humiliation, damaged clothing, and nearly missing a $750 million business deal. The consequences for you include losing your positions. Trevor leaned forward, suddenly desperate. Ms. Johnson, I have a mortgage. I have 3 kids in school. This job is all I have. I understand your concern, Imani replied, unmoved. Many people face financial hardship every day because of discrimination. Passed over for promotions, paid less for equal work, denied opportunities. Those consequences rarely generate emergency meetings or corporate soul-searching. Richard's face flushed with anger. So this is revenge? You're using your power to punish us? This isn't revenge, Imani corrected calmly. This is accountability. There's a critical difference. Revenge seeks to inflict pain for its own sake. Accountability ensures that actions have appropriate consequences, which creates incentives for better behavior in the future. Wayne Simmons, who had remained mostly silent, suddenly spoke up. It was wrong, he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. What we did was wrong. I knew it was wrong even as it was happening, but it was easier to go along. Mr. Whitfield spends thousands every month in our lounge. He knows the board members by name. You were just another passenger to me. Just another black passenger, Imani corrected gently. Wayne nodded, tears in his eyes. Yes, and I'm sorry, truly sorry. His unexpected confession shifted the energy in the room. Carlton spoke next. I questioned your membership because it surprised me, he admitted. I've worked that desk for 6 years, and I could count on one hand the number of black women with platinum status I've checked in. That's not an excuse. It's just, it was outside my experience, and I defaulted to suspicion instead of respect. Imani nodded. Thank you for that honesty. That's precisely the unconscious bias that needs to be addressed. Dennis Morgan remained defiant. So what happens now? We've lost our jobs. You've made your point. What more do you want? What I want, Imani replied thoughtfully, is for Silver Wingspan to become an example of how companies can address discrimination effectively. As part of that transformation, the board has approved a rehabilitation program. Brenda Martinez distributed folders to each former employee. This outlines a path for potential reinstatement, she explained. It includes comprehensive anti-bias training, community service hours with organizations serving underrepresented communities, and a probationary period if rehired. The former employees leafed through the documents with varying expressions of surprise and skepticism. This isn't guaranteed reemployment, Imani clarified. It's an opportunity to demonstrate genuine growth and understanding. Some of you may choose not to pursue it, and that's your right. But I believe people can change when given the right incentives and education. Trevor looked up from the document. You're giving us a second chance? After everything? I'm giving Silver Wingspan a second chance, Imani corrected. And by extension, I'm offering you the opportunity to be part of that transformation rather than merely casualties of it. Dennis scoffed. So we're supposed to be grateful? Jump through hoops for the possibility of getting our jobs back? No, Imani replied evenly. You're supposed to recognize that actions have consequences, but that growth is possible. Whether you're grateful is entirely up to you. Brenda Martinez stood. You have 48 hours to decide whether to participate in the rehabilitation program. After that, your termination becomes permanent and irrevocable. As the meeting concluded, Imani remained seated as the former employees gathered their belongings. Carlton approached her hesitantly. Thank you, he said quietly. Not everyone would offer a path back. Imani nodded acknowledgement but offered no further comfort. This wasn't about absolution. It was about systemic change. As the former staff filed out of the conference room, each clutching their termination papers and rehabilitation program documents, their faces reflected a spectrum of emotions, from lingering resentment to dawning realization of their role in a larger pattern of discrimination. Imani watched them leave from the executive office window. Some walked quickly to their cars, heads down, avoiding the small group of protesters and media that had gathered outside. Others stood in clusters, perhaps discussing their options or processing the shock of actual consequences. From this height, they looked small, not insignificant, but part of a much larger system that had enabled and rewarded their behavior until a single incident, captured on camera, had changed everything. Do you think any of them will actually complete the program? Bennett asked, joining her at the window. Some will, Imani replied. Those who recognize that this isn't just about one seat in one lounge on one day. Those who understand that true change requires discomfort and reflection. As the last of the former employees drove away, Imani turned from the window. The consequences had been delivered. Now the real work of transformation could begin. 6 months after the incident that had catapulted both Imani Johnson and Silver Wingspan Airlines into the national spotlight, Imani stood at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Westfield Hotel. The occasion was the annual Business Ethics Awards, and Imani had just been presented with the Corporate Accountability Leadership Award for her role in transforming an incident of discrimination into a catalyst for industry-wide change. Accountability isn't punishment, Imani told the assembled business leaders, her voice strong and clear. It's the mechanism by which we align our actions with our stated values. Without accountability, diversity statements are just words on a website. Inclusion policies are just documents in a drawer. The audience of executives, many of whom had made hasty revisions to their own corporate policies in the wake of the Silver Wingspan incident, listened with rapt attention. In the front row sat Zara Williams, the new CEO of Silver Wingspan Airlines, nodding in agreement. In the 6 months since the emergency shareholder meeting, Silver Wingspan had undergone a remarkable transformation. Under Zara's leadership, the airline had implemented what industry analysts now called the Johnson Standards, a comprehensive framework for ensuring equitable treatment of all customers regardless of race, gender, or other characteristics. These standards weren't merely reactive, they were proactive and measurable. Silver Wingspan now conducted regular blind testing of their customer service processes, sending individuals of different backgrounds through their system to identify and address disparities in treatment. Their VIP lounges operated under strict first-come, first-served policies, with no unwritten preferences for certain customers. Most significantly, Silver Wingspan had established an independent review board for discrimination complaints, removing such investigations from the internal chain of command that had previously buried them. The airline stock had not only recovered, but had climbed to new heights as their commitment to equity became a marketable advantage. As Imani concluded her acceptance speech, she reflected on the parallel journeys that had unfolded since that fateful day in the lounge. Vertex Innovation Technologies had successfully implemented their AI security system in Tokyo, and the contract had expanded to include major financial institutions across Asia. The $750 million deal had grown to over $1 billion, cementing Vertex's position as the global leader in AI security systems. Bradley Whitfield had not fared as well. After videos of his smug behavior in the lounge went viral, shareholders at Whitfield Technologies had demanded an internal investigation, which revealed troubling patterns of behavior and questionable business practices. Bradley had been forced to resign as CEO, and his company was now undergoing its own painful transformation under new leadership. More seriously, evidence had emerged suggesting corporate espionage targeting Vertex's proprietary technology, leading to ongoing federal investigations. The former Silver Wingspan employees had taken different paths. Wayne Simmons, the lounge manager, had embraced the rehabilitation program with surprising commitment. After completing extensive anti-bias training, he now worked with a community center in a predominantly black neighborhood, teaching professional skills to young adults. His perspective had been genuinely transformed by confronting the consequences of his actions. Trevor and Richard, the security officers, had initially rejected the rehabilitation option, filing wrongful termination lawsuits that were quickly dismissed given the video evidence of their behavior. Eventually, Trevor had reconsidered, entering the program and now working as a security consultant focusing on equitable enforcement practices. Carlton Peters had completed the program and been rehired by Silver Wingspan in a different capacity, now serving on their newly formed Equity Advisory Committee. His first-hand experience with how unconscious bias could manifest in customer interactions made him a valuable voice in policy development. Dennis Morgan remained defiant, occasionally appearing on certain news programs to claim he had been unfairly scapegoated. His professional reputation, however, was irreparably damaged, and he had been unable to secure another management position in the aviation industry. After the award ceremony, Imani found herself face-to-face with Zara Williams at the reception. "Congratulations on the award," Zara said, extending her hand. "Though I sometimes think I should be thanking you for creating the vacancy that led to my promotion." Imani smiled. "You earned that position on merit, Zara. It just took a crisis for the board to recognize talent they should have seen years ago." "Well, we're making progress," Zara replied. "The Johnson standards have been adopted by 3 other major airlines, and the industry association is considering making them part of their accreditation requirements." "That's exactly what this was always about," Imani nodded. "Systemic change, not just isolated consequences." As they spoke, Imani noticed a familiar figure approaching hesitantly from across the room. Dennis Morgan, looking considerably less confident than he had in the airport lounge, hovered at the edge of their conversation. "Ms. Johnson," he said when Imani acknowledged his presence, I've been hoping to speak with you." Imani raised an eyebrow, but nodded for him to continue. "The past 6 months have been," Dennis struggled to find the right words, "educational. I've had a lot of time to reflect. And while I still believe some aspects of the situation were handled too harshly, I've come to recognize that what happened in that lounge was wrong. Fundamentally wrong." It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of responsibility, but it was more than Dennis had conceded previously. "I'm glad to hear that reflection has led to some insight," Imani replied neutrally. "I'm working with a diversity consultant now," Dennis continued, "trying to understand my blind spots. It's not easy to confront these things about yourself." "Growth rarely is," Imani agreed, "but it's necessary." As Dennis nodded awkwardly and moved away, Zara looked thoughtful. "You know, 6 months ago I would have said it was impossible for someone like Dennis to change. Now, I'm not so sure." "People can change when the incentives align properly," Imani replied. "When maintaining discriminatory behavior becomes more costly than examining and adjusting it, change becomes possible. That's why consequences matter." Later that evening, as Imani prepared to board another flight to Tokyo to expand Vertex's Asian operations, she experienced a full-circle moment. Entering the same Silver Wingspan VIP lounge where she had been humiliated 6 months earlier, she was greeted by a new receptionist who checked her credentials efficiently and respectfully. The lounge itself had been redesigned, with seating arranged to maximize space and accessibility rather than creating artificial hierarchies of best spots. Signs clearly stated the first come, first served policy, with no exceptions for membership longevity or spending levels. As Imani selected a seat, coincidentally near where the confrontation had occurred, she noticed a young black girl, perhaps 10 years old, watching her with wide-eyed recognition. The girl approached, a tablet clutched in her hands. "Excuse me," she said shyly. "Are you Imani Johnson?" Imani smiled warmly. "I am." "We learned about you in school," the girl continued, gaining confidence, "for our Heroes and Role Models project. You're my hero because you stood up for what's right and made people listen." Touched, Imani gave the girl her full attention. "What's your name?" "Zoe," the girl replied. "I want to be a CEO like you someday. My mom says I can be anything if I work hard enough." "Your mom is absolutely right," Imani affirmed. "And you know what? The world needs more CEOs like you, Zoe. People who recognize from an early age that standing up for what's right isn't just important, it's essential." After signing an autograph for the beaming Zoe, Imani watched the girl return to her mother, excitedly showing off her treasure. In that moment, Imani realized that perhaps the most significant transformation wasn't in airline policies or corporate standards, but in what young girls like Zoe now saw as possible. The incident that began with humiliation had catalyzed changes that would ripple outward for years to come. One seat in one lounge had become a fulcrum for shifting an entire industry. One moment of standing firm against discrimination had created space for others to do the same. As her flight to Tokyo was announced, Imani gathered her belongings and moved toward the gate, her path taking her past Zoe and her mother once more. "Remember," she told the young girl as she passed, "sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to move when someone tells you that you don't belong." Zoe nodded solemnly, absorbing the wisdom, and Imani Johnson continued forward, just as she always had, turning obstacles into opportunities and insisting on a world where excellence was recognized regardless of what it looked like. Imani Johnson's story teaches us that true power lies not in titles or wealth, but in the courage to stand firm when faced with injustice. In a world where discrimination often goes unchallenged, her refusal to move from that seat represented something much greater than personal comfort. It was a declaration that dignity is non-negotiable. The most significant lesson here is that accountability creates change. When discriminatory actions carry real consequences, systems begin to transform. Silver Wingspan changed not because of heartfelt apologies or promises to do better, but because discrimination became financially and reputationally costly. We also learned that position and privilege come with responsibility. Imani used her shareholder status, not just for personal vindication, but to create lasting structural changes that would benefit countless others who might never have her platform or resources. Perhaps most importantly, this story reminds us that each person has a choice in moments of injustice: to remain silent, to move when told they don't belong, or to stand firm and insist on equal treatment. The ripple effects of these individual choices ultimately shape our collective future. What would you have done if you were in Imani's position? Would you have offered a path to redemption for those who discriminated against you? Comment below with your thoughts on how discrimination should be addressed in corporate America. If you believe more companies need to implement the Johnson standards, hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful racism stories that showcase courage in the face of injustice. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to understand the importance of standing firm against discrimination. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful action is simply refusing to move when someone says you don't belong.